We've got 40 people in the room. I just looked it up on another device, which I have to do these days. So let's see. I should probably move this way a little bit, maybe just a little tiny bit. There we go. We were just discussing concert ticket prices before the show started. And some people probably referring to the fact that I put up a video on my backup channel about my recent attendance at a Blue October concert. And partway through the song, Oh My, by Blue October, Justin Furstenfeld came over to me, stuck his hand out for a handshake, and then reached in and did a bro hug, which was a pretty cool experience. I was sitting in the front row in seat A. No, seat one, row A1, like the steak sauce. But a lot of people in the room already. Johnny Knoxville's here, Daniel Kester, Gene Ritchie, Idris Taylor, 116-3562, retired Butcher Boy, Richard Terhune, and more, 858 Bill. And yeah, sorry about that, 858 Bill. The juicy conversation always starts, and then I'll join in if I've got time. Then I'm like, why am let's go ahead and start this thing. Carl's Corner. Hello, Steve. Hello, Carl. Daniel Kester's in the house. Pissed off handicap guy checking in from Crystal Falls, Michigan, one of the most beautiful spots in the UP. Although, quite frankly, I love the entire Upper Peninsula. Terrell Cockram, hello, all. I am McNathan. Hello, everybody from Sun City Center, Florida. Richard Shoemaker staying warm in Texas House, Michigan. I got 43 degrees, mostly cloudy. It's not too windy out there, but I see a bit of overcast, and we had some snowflakes in the air a few minutes ago, but nothing to accumulate. So there you go. 116-3562 says Into the Ocean is the only Blue October song I know. Yeah, Into the Ocean is one of the more popular numbers, as they say. They had a song called Hate Me, which actually charted in the top 40, but was their only quote-unquote top 40 hit in America. But a few other good songs. I had a good friend of mine say, Steve, I've never even heard of them. I'm like, you've heard me talk about them, right? They got a lot of good music. And my same friend wrote me back and said, Steve, I didn't realize the size of their catalog and how good it is. And it spent half a day listening to their stuff. School Bus Mike, howdy, Steve. Stephanie Howe from the heart of Maine, we had snow. The Upper Peninsula of Michigan's had snow. But the thing about Michigan is Michigan, if it was sideways, it would be a couple time zones. I mean, technically, it already is 2 time zones, but barely. But the Upper Peninsula is so far, especially the Keweenaw, is so far from, like, say, Detroit, that the weather is often quite different. So, Johnny Knoxville Pay Week for the Buddy's Pizza Fund to tip the bartender early enough. And thank you, my friend. And Johnny, when he's in Detroit, we swing by Buddy's Pizza. At least we did last time. Buddy's Pizza is a chain in Detroit that makes great pizza, and they're famous. And Johnny said, "Hey, Steve, next time I'm in town, let's do Buddy's." I'm like, "Absolutely." And then he goes, "We're gonna go do it at the original Buddy's Pizza, right?" And I'm like, "I'm not even sure the original Buddy's Pizza is." And he's like, "No. I mean, it's not that hard to figure out with the internet and whatnot." I know that, but I mean, I used to go to the one on Northwestern Highway in Farmington. It's right across the street from my office. I know of a few others. There's a carryout in Woodward near my parents' house. And Johnny goes, no, we're going to the original Buddy's Pizza. And we did, and it was amazing. And yeah. It's one of those things. It's a Detroit thing. Every city's got their thing, a couple restaurants or whatever. There's a bunch of Buddy's Pizza locations, but we went to the original, which I'm assuming is slightly better than the others, although they're all obviously part of the chain. Good afternoon, Professor from Lewis. Thank you, my friend. Janet K, this is the earliest I've ever been to the chat. You got here before we started, technically. Oh, Jolan True checking in from Nova Scotia. Checking out. Well, thanks for checking in, my friend. I've never been there, but I hear all about it. Mr. Diggy is today's example of learning that my backdrop is a studio setup and not a whole room. How dare something on the internet be fake? I think didn't I do a vault video for my backup channel explaining how I had a studio. I had an actual studio where I shot my videos, and I moved. And so then I decided, well, I'll just redo the back wall because that's all you really ever saw. It looks identical. Johnny Knoxville's never heard of Blue October. I assume you've heard about it here, though, because I talk about them all the time. Oh, boy. Lewis Browning, get any stickers in the mail? Yeah, I did get this one. Certified chainsaw operator, which I'll probably stick on my chainsaw just for fun. So when they're taking me to the morgue, as the one viewer said, they can go, hey, look at this idiot. He thinks he's certified to do something. Johnny Knoxville, remember the movie The Hunt for Red October? I'm not sure if Blue October has any deep meaning behind their name or if it's perhaps inspired by that. I'm curious to know. Blue October would be very different, though, than Red October in the Soviet Union. Kenroy Goborn, fresh off a Category 5 hurricane in Jamaica. It's a disaster area. I'm sorry to hear that, my friend. I heard about that hurricane going through the Caribbean, as they so often do. And I feel for you. I hope everything's okay. So NZ Kiwi NZ hello, Steve from New Zealand. Thank you for checking in. I love my Kiwi friends. Absolutely. Santa Mike is an authorized representative holder in due course, secured party creditor on behalf of the benefactor and the settlor and the Terrell Cockrum's in Traverse City, beautiful town up here in Michigan, sort of. 36 degrees up here. I was up there 2 weeks ago filing documents in the courthouse. Beautiful courthouse, beautiful city, but neat old historic buildings and stuff up there. MH08, if the snow doesn't stick, you must have quit. Fatting Butterpants. Hey, Steve, love that second channel. Yeah, I put stuff in the second channel usually because it's a little bit off topic, a little bit. And every now and then I think I go, I could have put that one on the main channel, but the one about me getting the bro hug from Justin Furstenfeld of Blue October wouldn't have made sense on my main channel, but I knew a lot of people would enjoy it. So DePaul says the actual wall is better than a green screen. And the thing is, I could have used a green screen, but number one, I when I see them being used, I don't know, it bugs me. It seems lazy. You don't have to dust a green screen. Oh, Bob Kerflugen's checking from a slightly snowing Gaylord. Hey, we got somebody checking in. Doug Herndon from Altoona, first time watching from the start. Huh, okay. Well, see, I've always been here at the start because it's me, Carl's Corner says, on your backup channel, you had a black and white picture in the background. What was it? Was it a recent video? Or are you talking about like a framed picture on the wall behind me or something? Or I don't know. Because I put up so many wacky videos. I put 8-year-old videos up there. So I don't know. Steve G says that sticker goes on your hard hat. With this one, I don't have a hard hat. Should I put it on my chainsaw chaps? I had somebody go, no, you need chainsaw pants. Well, I was wearing pants. Ilya says, hi, Steve. I watch your videos at 1.5 times, and now you sound drunk. I've had people tell me that I speak slow enough to listen to it double time. And I'm like, people complain I talk too fast. NZ Kiwi NZ says, yes, you did. And explain that your brother built your bookshelves. Yes, I did what? What was the question? My brother Dave did build my bookshelves. He didn't build the backdrop, though. The backdrop was built by a friend of mine. My brother, who passed away in April, Dave, is the one who's a woodworker and who built all my bookshelves and a lot of the desk I'm sitting at right here. There's no way for me to show it to you. Everything's on it. But the desk I'm sitting at was made by my brother, as was my kitchen table, my coffee table, a whole bunch of my bedroom furniture, a bunch of my office furniture, and of course, some of my studio furniture as well. So, Tornado James, what's your most memorable snow memory? It would have to be the storm of, I believe, 1978, when a huge snowstorm went through the Midwest and dumped like 18 inches on Detroit in the space of like 12 hours and shut the world down for like 3 days. It was ugly, but it was historic. You can look up the storm of 1978 and find out all about it. James Tremelix, don't forget about Blue Oyster Cult. Yeah, I don't think Blue October borrowed anything from Blue Oyster Cult, but I don't know. Maybe they did. Johnny Knoxville is checking the weather for us in Bad Axe, Michigan. Something we should always be aware of is 40 and mostly cloudy in Bad Axe. Not too long ago, somebody said, "Hey, Steve, you ever heard of Ubly?" I'm like, "Of course I've heard of Ubly. It's just outside of Bad Axe." Christine Loveless, 65 in Virginia. Virginia is for lovers, by the way. I remember they used to tell us it. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Noreen Martin, according to AI, the band Blue October got its name from a pivotal month in the life of lead singer Justin Firstnell, who decided in October that he needed to get sober and grow up. I give it about a 50-50 of being accurate, only because it's AI. I've seen AI say some really, really stupid things. I saw AI refer to something. It goes, the first time they did this was on this date, and the second time they did it was on this date, and the second date was previous to the first date. So unless AI's figured out a way to time travel, that doesn't make sense. 858 Bill, what the heck was that hate speech warning? I have no idea what you're talking about. Scott Summers agrees about the green screen. Somewhat seeming cheap and lazy. Beata Graf Av Dalhagen, good morning. Oh, Doug Herendon says he usually watches the replay later. Well, the replay doesn't have as much immediacy to it. I rewatch them after a couple days, and often I'll read the comments. I miss a lot of comments, unfortunately. And I'll go, oh, I missed a question. That was a good question. I missed that question. NZ, Kiwi NZ, correct. I love your set. I have fun trying to find the hundo. I forgot to move it one day last week, and I feel bad when I do that. But I also put it one time where I was convinced nobody could see it, but people always find it. Like, people can see through me. Mr. Diggy, how large is your mailed-in shirt collection now? Do you have a shirt rail like a dry cleaner? I've got 2 racks over here that I think hold about 100 shirts each, but I've got hundreds. I took some more out and put some more in today. I don't even know. Carl's Corner goes, the video with your chaps. It was on the floor. The video with your chaps. I don't have any chaps. It was on the floor. Oh, boy. Dustin Carpenter. Was that KROQ sticker for Rochester, Minnesota? No, KROQ Los Angeles. It's a classic. I almost said classic rock. It's a classic station. Station was a leader in new music in Los Angeles for decades, but they've screwed the format up recently. San Joaquin Valley Transparency. Hey man, good to catch you live. It's good to be caught as long as it ain't the cops chasing. Tito Danino, condolences. NZ, Kiwi, NZ, explain the backdrop. I've done a couple videos where I've gone through and explained what the things are, and then I miss stuff. And I always think they're boring. But on my backup channel, I've got at least one video explaining the most recent backdrop with all the stuff that's on it. Or are you simply asking, like, to explain how it was made? Because there's a video about that also. Bob Kerflugen saw taxidermy whistle pig in a museum today. Of course, whistle pig is a groundhog, is a woodchuck, is all kinds of other things. Stephanie Howe, sorry you lost Dave. Thank you. I appreciate that. My brother was 68 years old. He had a stroke earlier this year, and he passed away in April. And it was, despite the fact he had the health issues, I'm the youngest of 6 brothers, and he was a couple brothers above me in age and seemed indestructible. He had run sub 3-hour marathons in his life. And was one of the most physically active people I've ever known. So A. Watson caught you live. James Pepper, is your brother's furniture comfortable? Well, he doesn't make, he didn't make chairs. He made desks, bookshelves. He made benches, although I don't have any benches of his. coat racks, mirrors and mirror frames, and things like that. He never made any chairs or anything like that, though. So you don't refer to a bookshelf as being comfortable. I'm just kidding with you. Steve G, am I the only one who does not want to see Steve in chaps? Well, there's a reason I'm not wearing this. I don't want to see me in chaps. Ilias's Bad Axe and Ubley sound like lazily written fantasy places. Well, Bad Axe, of course, has a name because it's named after something somebody found in the original spot. Yeah, KLSX is the LA's classic rock station for classic rock as the format. I was referring to KROQ as being a classic station that played rock. They played rock beginning around like 1980 when they were a very, very small station as far as how many people knew who they were, well into the recent years when they changed formats. So, Duncan Campbell, good morning. How was your weekend? My weekend's good. My weekend's good. Let's see. Oh, I went and saw a movie. I knew I did something yesterday. I saw the movie Nuremberg. It's one of the best movies I've seen in eons. It was astounding. Absolutely astounding. Nuremberg, especially if you are a World War II history buff. I mean, there's some technical inaccuracies, but they're so minor, they're irrelevant. But it is such a fascinating idea because, and I'm not going to ruin it for anybody, but you have to understand that when we put the people on trial at Nuremberg, that is the Americans, the British, the French, and the Russians, there were all kinds of things that were unknown about it. But the Americans sent in a psychiatrist and ostensibly said, we basically want you to go in and make sure these people are fit to stand trial. So they can't claim later they were insane or something. And the psychiatrist goes in and he's examining all of these defendants at the Nuremberg trials, like Goering and Hess and Dönitz. And he's comes to the conclusion that they're not insane or anything, but he's also kind of terrified because he realizes about how far people will go in the wrong circumstances. And so it is an absolutely astounding movie. I cannot recommend it enough. Sisu 2 comes out next week. So my recommendations will change next weekend. But right now, I have not recommended a movie at a theater in a long time. Nuremberg. Go see it. James Pepper, where do you get the car models that are accurate? Those are all die casts. The companies make those. It's very easy to find the turbine car, the Tucker, or the winged cars, the Cobras. The only tricky part with the Cobras, I couldn't find one in exactly the right color. That Cobra that's on my shelf has got white side pipes, whereas my Cobra's got chrome side pipes. So what are you going to do? Casey Jimmy says, I searched Google for the Newmar RV VIN mess, and 10 minutes later, YouTube cross-pollinates and throws multiple Newmar ads during my viewing. No, that's one of the problems with the way the internet works. I've searched a product before and then bought one. And because of my search, it sat there and threw ads at me for 3 weeks for a product I already bought. And it's annoying. I'm like, they're wasting money sending ads at me. But, what are you going to do? So, Dustin Carpenter, I'm sorry, Steve. It's one of the hardest things to endure. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Aurelion 8, is the clause in Fred Astaire's will for no bio picture to be made enforceable? Well, there's only so much you can do from beyond the grave. All you can do is control your estate, and you could probably tie your estate to an agreement that no one in the estate will cooperate, but they make unauthorized biographies all the time. So, Brian Wiacek, do lawyers without law degrees make good judges? There aren't many lawyers without law degrees these days, although I know that might become a thing. I wouldn't want to be in front of a judge with no law degree. In the old days in Michigan, you did not need to be a lawyer to become a judge, and they changed that. And believe it or not, it happened during my career. So when I was first a lawyer in 1991, there were still some judges on the bench who did not have law degrees. So, it's an elected position. Ozzie Thompson, Wear your safety helmet. What's your most favorite muscle car of all time from Toronto, Canada? I'd have to go with a 69 Dodge Charger, Hemi, Daytona, 4-speed. They built mm, 50 or 60 of them, I think. I forgot the exact number. The numbers might not even be that accurate, but not that many of them. But if I had one, I'd hate to drive it. To me, it almost belongs to a museum. So Ram 50 V8. I love World War II history. My dad loved the Civil War history. Yeah, I mean, I like military history in general. I don't know as much about, like, I don't know, the Peloponnesian War, but when it comes to war, pretty much from Napoleon forward, I've studied most of it, which would be considered modern European history. But the older stuff, I don't know as much about it. But yeah, World War I, World War II, quite a bit. PRO. Are you aware of the GM EV1 recently found? Seems they have ownership. What do you think? Oh, absolutely. I followed that story. So General Motors rounded up the EV1s at the end of the program and destroyed most of them. But they donated a bunch to museums and stuff and schools. And the donation is usually made in such a way that if you don't want it anymore, you got to give it back to us or destroy it. But you have to remember that General Motors doesn't exist anymore in the same entity. They went bankrupt. So the old GM is who donated that car, first of all. And second of all, it was donated to a school that apparently got sick of dealing with it. And they parked it someplace and it incurred either, I forgot, parking tickets or storage. But either way, it went up for auction. And when somebody bought it at auction, they got it free and clear. And I think it went over for over $100,000, which, I mean, it's a cool car, but it's historically more important than it is like as a, daily driver kind of thing. Scott Summers, do you have an air purifier? No, I don't. Let me know how it goes. Believe in yourself is manifesting Mark Miller. Manifesting Mark Miller. Carl's Corner, I was just following orders. Well, that's, yeah, and understand the distinction. I was just following orders is a defense. But when you're talking to somebody one-on-one, like a psychiatrist, who says, "But yes, but don't explain to me why you're not guilty. Explain to me why you did it." And it's scary when people do things that seem so horrible. You're like, how could you do that? And then you realize, like, oh, a lot of people are capable of those kinds of things. Dustin Carpenter, GSX Stage 1, go fast with class. Yeah, no. You said, Steve, what's your favorite Buick? I'd say a GSX, probably. Daniel Kester, I saw a winged car a few days ago. The McKecken Show, the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals are in Chicago 1 week from right now. And there will be more winged cars there than you can shake a stick at. So, DePaul 31, war, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing. At least that's what they tell me. Daniel Kester, GM tried a Wankel Corvette in the early 70s. A lot of car companies tried some oddball stuff. The experimental stuff is always, you hear stories. The question is, did any of these vehicles survive? And were any of them ever like taken to shows or demonstrated or, that kind of thing? That's what I find most interesting. Codemeister Beats, I find history interesting, but European history is annoying because the sheer number of King Georges and Louis and so forth. There's always a problem with Louis the 14th, 15th, and 16th. Dustin Carpenter's GM claiming it back. Not from what I understand. I understand they don't care. They're like, whatever. Old history. 116-3562 interned at Willow Run in college. Willow Run's down there by Ypsilanti. The history of Ford building the airport to build B-24s. Yeah. Ford remarkably was cranking out the B-24s at Willow Run. And that's the one thing about World War II. And a lot of history books focus wars on battles. They talk about, like, the Battle of Kursk, the Battle of Stalingrad. And don't get me wrong, these things are important battles. They are. But if you really want to understand what happened, then you have to actually look at it and go, okay, what really happened was America's industrial output capability dwarfed everybody else except possibly Russia. Guess what? We're on their side. So yeah, the Germans could field some mighty nice army tanks, but they couldn't field as many as we put out. But another story for another day. Ozzy Thompson's more Superbirds than Daytonas. Well, of course, the Daytonas they built maybe 503 or 508. The numbers change. The Superbirds about 1,420 ish. So not quite three times as many, but pushing three times as many. Had to do the homologation rules in NASCAR, although the homologation rules did not apply in NASCAR the same way as they applied in USAC. So that in NASCAR, you do not have any of the cars running in 1971, except for the one car entered in Daytona that was being driven by Mario Rossi or owned by Mario Rossi. But on the other hand, you'd see them in 71 in USAC. It's like Don White, for instance. But maybe that's not all the information you wanted. I don't know. Matthias says the psychiatrist was really tricked and outsmarted by Goering. Well, there's some debate about that. Um, because I mean they addressed that in the movie. I don't know if you saw the movie yet or not, Matthias, but the psychiatrist even said that Goering was very intelligent, very, very intelligent. And so, when somebody comes in and they're the enemy, i.e., you're a German and they're an American in 1945, you're going to be on your guard. So, Tim Nossum, YouTube places commercials, not Steve. Somebody else asked above about commercials, and yeah, there are commercials during my videos on YouTube. It's kind of hard not to do them, and it's another story altogether. Vienna's Prime says the thing about history is that official history is written by the victors, while actual history is often whispered by the survivors. Uh, and there's truth to all of that. And one of the things you have to remember is that a lot of the real history to understand a war, you don't go and read Winston Churchill's autobiography. Okay. Don't get me wrong. You're going to learn a lot about higher level stuff that happened behind closed doors in London and in DC and in Russia, and that kind of thing. But the real history is the people who are either on the ground with the war around them, i.e., civilians, or the soldiers. And I'll tell you right now, some of the best histories I've ever read were written by people whose only claim to fame was they wrote a book, meaning that they were just another person. They were just another soldier. And I can think of a ton of great first-person histories that were written by people who were there. And I find those much more compelling and much more interesting than reading. Don't get me wrong, I've read Lost Victories by Manstein, and it's a fabulous, fascinating book about Blitzkrieg. But he's talking about stuff at the divisional level. And you see these charts and graphs and maps and stuff. And the only people who saw it that way were people like him on either side of the battle. And in reality, go find a book written by a soldier who was out in there on that ground that's in that map. And it's a much more interesting and more realistic thing to do. Matthias says the courtroom from the Nuremberg trial still exists. I believe they did a pretty good job, and I have not looked into it that heavily because I just saw the movie last night. But they made the courtroom look very, very realistic, and I believe they did a pretty good job of recreating it. So that's pretty cool. Art S is checking from the mythical Central Jersey. Michael Myers says the 8th Air Force destroyed Germany's ability to make war. And you got to remember another aspect. We did the bombing. The Allies did, and we had the daylight bombing by the American Air Force, and then of course the Brits were doing the nighttime bombing and so on. And we were trying to disable Germany's ability to make war. And we discovered that, for instance, one of the most effective bombing runs we ever did was the Schweinfurt ball bearing works. And it turns out you need ball bearings for a lot of stuff. And at first you're just thinking, oh, where do they build the planes? It's like, okay, well, every single plane needs ball bearings. Turns out if you get rid of the ball bearings, you cause a bigger problem. So, Ozzie Thompson, I love NASCAR. Will be my 60th anniversary this February. Daytona 500 in the new year. I've mentioned it before, but I interviewed Richard Petty a couple years ago, and was talking to him, and he said, "You understand? Because I've been to every single NASCAR race, every single one." And I'm like, "Wait a second." I did the math. I go, "You were too young to race in the first season." He goes, "But my dad raced. I was at every race." Procatus Prime, greetings from Puerto Rico. Love your videos, and they're very educational. Watch every single one. Art S. America is fun. It's always fighting with itself until someone else pokes us hard enough. Then, that's true. Nothing unites us more than a good war. And I'm saying that to be facetious because it's unfortunate because, as somebody else mentioned earlier, war, what is it good for? Jennifer points out that Hogan's Heroes had several episodes about bombing a ball bearing factory. Hogan's Heroes, very, very odd now if you look at it in hindsight. But they actually, you can tell, tried kind of to introduce things that seemed moderately rooted in history. Because I remember them talking about the bombing raids on ball bearing factories and that kind of thing. So Matthias says the Adolf Eichmann trial is available in English. That really gives you some insight how people are when they got some power, get some power. I've read books about Eichmann in particular and his trial, because there a lot of attorneys do talk about the intricacies of these trials, and they mentioned this again in the movie Nuremberg, which I saw last night, where they say, we're going to put these guys on trial for what they did. We're going to be putting them on trial in Germany, but the people judging them will be French and Russian and British and American, and that had never been done before. And so the question then is, Eichmann was tried in Israel for crimes committed in Germany after he'd been captured in South America, and it raised a whole bunch of interesting questions. Blazer O2 LS is the Vega was going to get a rotary engine in 74, but GM couldn't get the engine to behave. Dustin Carpenter, what happened with a 62 to 64 Dodge in Plymouth? Did NASCAR allow them because they were sold as full size? I didn't follow the 62, 3 and 4 years as much, although 64 would have been the year that things started getting more modern, but I don't pay much attention to which models of cars are being sold. All I know is that NASCAR would tell the car companies, here are the cars that we consider of yours to be full size, which can be raced in Grand National. Daniel Kester points out that a lot of Germany's guns use ball bearings. When you say guns, do you mean the actual guns in army parlance as opposed to a weapon? But I imagine that they would. Weird Car Life with TC, the movie, says Steve. Well, it could be Stevie. I don't know. Art S says you could get a White's half track for your next winter vehicle. I love half tracks, but man, they got to be expensive to maintain. I've seen a couple half tracks for sale. They are cool, but they got to get a horrible movie, and they they got to get horrible gas mileage, and they got to be expensive to maintain. And that's assuming you can drive them illegally. I'm not even sure. 2001 movie Conspiracy. That's what I'm thinking of. Very good. Viennicus Prime points out that talks about the meeting. I always forget the name of the conference regarding the final solution. Bob Kerflugen recently picked up a book on Goebbels from Goodwill. Haven't gotten around to reading it yet. I believe he's the one whose diary got published after the war, I think. Image Doc Ray, Robert Clary, LeBeau on Hogan's Heroes was an actual Auschwitz survivor. Would the math work out on that? I suppose he's very, very young. I seem to recall having heard that before. So Georgiana Thornton's checking in from San Antonio, Texas. I appreciate that. Daniel Kester says the ball bearings would be the guns that had a slide to absorb the recoil power. Yeah. Lou T1501. The joke I heard is German engineers had invented the paperclip would have 11 moving parts with shimmed roller bearings. The amazing thing about that is the Germans are known for their machining ability. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that they're outclassing us now, but the whole idea of a guild and a trade for machinists, especially around World War II, was very, very revered in Germany in a way that was not so in America. But George Yanis' great video today about the honeybee hives. Yeah, thank you. I got that's one of the more popular, most requested videos I had in a long time. A ton of people. A lot of people I heard from the first time, people saying, Steve, I've never written to you before, but I want you to do this story. So I did that story. And I always tell people, thank you. I appreciate it. I like when people reach out to me. So Blazer02LS says he had the tattoo covered during the show. You mean the serial number? Michael Myers, I've worked beside German engineers. They do fantastic work. DePaul 31, German engineering is a selling point for Volkswagen and Audi. Yeah, they've had other issues lately, though. Volkswagen with that Dieselgate thing. Oh my gosh. Art asks, who cares about the mileage? Half tracks are street legal with rubberized pads. Probably cheaper to run than many new cars, but not good for highway speeds. I have a sneaky feeling that the mileage on a half track would be really bad. I don't know why I think that. But also, when you say street legal, it depends on the state you're in. Some states are cracking down on former military stuff. So, Arthur Estrada says, greetings from your fans in New Mexico. Well, thank you for checking in. And as somebody once said, wait, there's a New Mexico now? James Byron, what do you think about the flock camera system? The flock camera system. Well, I'm not sure if it's come through in any of my videos, but I don't seem to like it that much. No, I personally I don't like the idea about the government just surveilling us for the sake of surveilling us. If there's a particular reason why there's a problem at one place, they said, hey, there's this park, and every single week we get called there, and there's always blah blah. Okay, put in cameras and put in noticing and say everybody surveillance. But when you park one by the side of the road and just catches every car that goes by and records it, and by the way, it's being run by a private company, and there's all kinds of problems. Mexican Spec asks what color the cup is today. The cup is orange. Matthias says in Germany, you're allowed to follow your fleeing bees and even trespass on other people's premises, written into the law. You mean you can go bring your bees home? I know in many places you're allowed to go onto property and even trespass to recover an animal, depending on what it's doing there. In this case, somebody stole the hives, and the hives disappeared, and someone drove off with them, we suspect. Weird Car Life with TC says you did pronounce Skagit right in that recent video, but I mispronounced the other town name, which I never would have guessed we mispronounced. It had a long E instead of a short E. Jay Klein, German car engineering is great until you have to work on them. But if you're a German mechanic being paid good money, you don't mind. Vienticus Prime says Schrodinger pointed out that observing a system inherently changes it. Remember that when it comes to mass surveillance. Well, that's true too. I mean, I've talked to people who said I know where the flock cameras are and I avoid them. Oh, Ilya says New Mexico was named so before the nation of Mexico, which is a bit weird. I'm not familiar with any of that, so I don't know. Paul Harris puts leashes on his bees. I put the little shock collars on them. The invisible fence. So if they fly too close, they get shocked and they come back. Now, of course, that means that they don't get to make as much honey because there's nothing in my yard for them to feed off of. But I'm joking. Solaris, the long hauler, says with the bee issue, maybe the new neighbor wanted to get rid of the bees because it might affect the value of his property if he wants to sell it. You never know. All kinds of things could be happening here. But the weirdest part is the fact that the guy who said, yeah, somebody come in here and take them, won't say who took them. Makes me think that he's in on it. Yeah, you know something? William Page says it's the Von C conference, which I was going to guess that, but I wasn't 100% certain. When I guess it and I'm wrong, people go nuts. So I figure it's worse to be wrong and people go nuts than the sheer small amount of joy I get when I'm right. Daniel Kester, have you heard the Model T was easy to work on? That's what they often said. I don't know myself. I've never worked on one, but I've had people tell me that one of the reasons the cars are so popular is that anybody with a remote amount of experience working on a farm just made it worse. Working on a farm could probably fix the engine, for instance, because it was not much different than the engine you might find in a contemporary tractor at the time, but I could be wrong. Bob Kerflugas says people need to mind their own business or beeswax will take also. MH08, my 65 Chrysler was easy to work on, could take a nap in the engine compartment. Sask Watch. Hello, Steve Lehto from the Thumb. From the Thumb of Michigan, where? I need more specificity. We've already mentioned Bad Axe and Ubley today. I'm hoping you're someplace obscure like Verona or Elkton, although that's not that obscure. Matthias says a good beehive is worth about $350 in Germany. Yeah, I don't know the actual value, but it's a dangerous game to start playing about. I'll steal it and hope it's not worth that much. Blazer O2LS says the Model T is very easy to work on. He's owned 3 of them. Jay Klein had a 41 Willis Jeep that was very easy to work on. Yeah, the early Jeeps in particular are so cool. I have a Jeep. It's a 98. So it's not an old Jeep, but I fantasize about getting an old World War II, flat fender Jeep. I'd love to have one. Sasquatch says south of Caro. Okay. Is there a town name or is your mailing address Caro? Caro, of course, would be over there in Tuscola County. Been there many times. Home of the radio station WIDL. Although, with my luck, they've changed call letters, but that's what they were a long time ago. 858 Bill had a coworker show me a box wrench with a square hole. Told me its sole purpose was for adjusting the brakes on a Model A. I spoke to a group of guys who restored Model Ts, and over in the corner was this weird hook-like device that looked like you might be carrying like blocks of ice with it or something. Like, what's that? And he goes, that's for pulling the engine. Like it was specifically designed to pull engines from a Model T. So Jay Klein said I learned to drive on a 41 Willis. Oh. Tornado James, what do you think about vehicles not being able to repair by the owners due to software? I'm a big opponent of that. I personally think that that's going to be the death of much of the used car industry is when cars get to be a certain age. And, in the old days, you could just keep rebuilding them, but you can't rebuild the computers and control modules the same way. Somebody might make them, but you never know. John the Beagle Dad says, it's been a while from Fort Myers, Florida. Say hi to my new Beagle. Portos the Beagle? John N. Jr., can you tell me if you've received this? Yes, 5 by 5, as we say. Loud and clear. Oh, boy. Dan E. Boyd, most prominent orphan car I've driven was a Studebaker Avanti. The Avanti, 1963. That Avanti looked so far ahead of its time. Weird looking car, I think. I'm not a big fan of the way it looks, except it was so far ahead of its time. That you show the car to somebody today and go, guess what year this is? They're like, I don't know, 87, you know. But Bob Kerflugen, my 8-year-old son Harrison, wants to know how many cases you have won. I don't even know how many cases I've handled. And I'll tell you right now, you remember more of the cases you lose, but the vast majority of my cases settle. I consider that a win, but you never know. John the Beagle did. My previous Beagle was killed by a snake. Was it bitten by a snake? Wow. What a tragedy. Never heard of that before. I mean, I've heard of people, but not a dog. Ram 50 V8 says, I own an auto repair business. Today's cars are like personal computers. They are obsolete before they are sold. I've joked with people. When I was in high school, my brothers and I could go to a junkyard and find an old Chevy Nova and drag it home and have it running by the afternoon. And the equivalent is not true today. You find a car, drag it home. Just ask Sam Crack on YouTube. And it's got control modules and computers and wiring harnesses and all kinds of stuff that you can't diagnose that easily, nor replace or repair that easily. Arthur Estrada says, why do car companies make cars that can go so fast if it's illegal to drive them faster than 75? You understand you're asking a guy who owns a Cobra, right? It's not that it'll do 150, it's how fast you can get to 75. Terry LaGrosse Bassan says, my dog died by snake bite too in Australia. I'm sorry to hear that. I mean, I understand it makes complete sense, especially with a smaller dog, I'm guessing. Tornado James, what's your most memorable case you've had that you can tell us about? Most of my cases take too long to explain. I often talk about the one where I had a client who bought a used Chevy Blazer as is, and shortly after she bought it, the engine blew up, and we sued the dealership that sold it to her, and it was sold as is, and the opponent of mine kept bringing motions to dismiss the case. They bought it as is. They can't sue for that. Anyway, 3-day jury trial. We won. We got every penny we asked for, plus my attorney fees. And the other attorney was livid. He was beside himself. He's like, I don't understand how you in a good conscience can even take a case where somebody bought a car as is. That car can be anything. I'm like, no, it can't. As is means there's no warranty of merchantability. It doesn't protect you from fraud. Doesn't protect you from all kinds of stuff. NZ, Kiwi, NZ, a settlement is a win. Yeah, it's actually a win for both sides. And I've had some people who don't get that, but that's true. Sam as I am says Australia has so many deadly venomous creatures. Not poisonous, venomous. It's amazing anyone can survive there. Yeah, I've seen that map joking where it's like it shows Australia is one color and the ocean surrounding it's another color. And it says in the first color, where land animals will kill you. The other color is where ocean creatures will kill you. Mike Torello just dropped by to hit the thumbs up button. Thank you. Working today, huh? I am too, I guess. Arthur Estrada, stay blessed and continue to be great. 858 Bill had a neighbor's husky go from vibrant and beautiful to decimated and dead within 2 weeks due to valley fever. Valley fever. Is this something dogs can catch, I take it? I've never heard of valley fever. Is it respiratory or what is it? But yeah, that's sad. I've not talked about it much, but one of the two Shelties that I had as a puppy suffered a very, very severe reaction to something and wound up having to go to specialists. And a specialist finally diagnosed it. but it was scary because a dog can't tell you how it feels. Codemeister beats the real questions with all the nonsense going on. Realistically, they could easily limit top speed before it's over. A DNA sample will be required to start the car. Well, they've already discussed putting kill switches and governors on cars that are being driven by people who are drunk drivers and or reckless drivers. But for a governor to put on a car and say this car can't go faster than this, it's going to be a while. Blah blah blah. Sisu Revenge premieres Thursday. I've got it on my calendar. I'm going to see it, I believe, on Saturday, possibly Friday. I saw a preview for it yesterday at the theater. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. FH, valley fever is a fungal infection. Okay. Nanamel, bacteria or spore? Carl's Corner Lassie could probably tell you. Did Timmy fall down the well, Lassie? I never said that. That was an attempt at meta humor. Meta humor. David Zeradnansky says my neighbor's dog died from eating poison mushrooms. Yeah, there's a mushroom that's common in North America that's poisonous, and I've seen documentaries about it. They're everywhere, and they're poisonous. It's just that most people are smart enough not to eat the mushrooms they find in their yards. But what about their cats or their dogs? Sam as I am says he knew a person who died from valley fever, airborne fungus found in California. I've never heard of that. Oh, Bob Kerflugen is off. Had fun watching. Has to work the midnight shift. Mark Miller says he may have seen a drag race with a Tesla against the 2020 Ranger. Beat him off the line, but gave up at 60 miles per hour. Steve Kelleher can't wait for a Coyote versus Acme. I believe that's still slated to premiere in September. I've been speaking with the people at the Institute for Justice about putting on a benefit extravaganza of sorts. And we will show the movie, have a reception, have a meet and greet, and then probably do a Q&A after the show, both about the movie and then a little more seriously about what the Institute for Justice does. I'll be there. The IJ will be there. The Canadian robot lady will be there. And a good time will be had by all. But it's still further down the road. So Nana Mel says that the harvest in California's Central Valley is where many people get valley fever, hence the name, which makes sense. NZ Kiwi says the Katapo redback spider is our only venomous thing, except for there are some plants that are poisonous. Interesting. Yeah, I know that New Zealand, being far enough out, had its own plants and animals that were unique to them, hence the kiwi. So MH08, you need that power when passing on 2-lane rural roads. The prodigal stranger, I'll be there with bells on. And lucky for you is I look phenomenal in bells. Now Ray Burleson says valley fever is simply hantavirus. I've heard of hantavirus. I mean, The Simpsons has talked about hantavirus. Krusty the Clown once sold something that was tainted with hantavirus. Who saw that coming? Oh boy. Yeah, no, we'll try to turn the whole thing into a thing. We can't broadcast the movie on the internet, but we can live stream the stage portion of it afterwards, and I'll see to it that we get to do that. I can put that on my channel in real time, which would be a lot of fun. Art S. Forget about old cars. Get an old bulldozer. Most fun at 1/2 mile per hour. Never driven a bulldozer. I've driven a tractor, like a Kubota, a couple times, but um, now Sam as I am says hantavirus is a virus. Valley fever is a soil-based fungus which goes airborne. Okay, so I'm just reading what people are saying. And I know that through crowdsourcing, people will correct it if it's wrong. Johnny Z, hidden valley fever is caused by too much ranch dressing. Chris Bulldog, my dad drove a bulldozer in the Navy for the Seabees. Yeah, and people forget, we have all these specialists in our armed forces, and I've met people who've done some very, very unusual things when you think of like the Army or the Navy or whatever. And so in World War II, the island hopping done by our military, when we took over an island, if they wanted to put an airstrip there, if there wasn't one already, they'd bring in the Seabees and bulldozers, and they'd create an airstrip real fast. And they were good at it. David Phillips, good afternoon, everyone. Stay safe. Blazer02LS says that pretty much every vehicle built since about 2017 has a rev or speed limiter in the PCM coding, although it might not be active, but it's there. Might be hidden in the code. Doesn't surprise me, but I wonder how long it would take somebody to go, oh, that's in the code. I can just remove it or work around it. So, Sam as I am says there is an internet, folks. If you can access YouTube just a click away. Don't get me going on that. I can. There's certain. I know what all the. Well, I know what most of the triggers are, and there's certain words I can pronounce correctly. And people go, you said that wrong. Oh, you used that word wrong." It's like, look it up. I used it right. Woody stems my uncle the CB and Guadalcanal, etc. Wow. G Keyman 565. Google says there are at least 50 species of poisonous mushrooms in Michigan. A good friend of mine is certified to actually identify mushrooms. She took classes. She can actually go, okay, that one there will kill you. That one there will only make you sick. That one there does nothing at all. Little Jefferson airplane there for you. Wild Radio. I've really been enjoying your videos. Thank you. Well, thank you, Wild Radio. I'm intrigued by the name Wild Radio. I worked in radio for a while. Blah, blah, blah. My dad strung wires on telephone poles during the Korean War. In Korea? That'd be pretty cool. I mean, someone's got to do it, Solaris, the long hauler, says you have people who will troll just because. There's some people are doing it on purpose, and some people are just legitimately stupid. I mean, they don't understand a word can have two meanings or three pronunciations or whatever, And one of the original jokes that I started doing on my show is I had an Oxford English dictionary on my set, the 2-volume condensed version, and I'd look up words and people complained. And then a viewer sent in the real expanded version and so on. But people complain about things where they're wrong, but they want, but you're anonymous on the internet, so you can do that, right? Jason Brindamauer says that my 2000 Grand Am GT had no limiter, and said that one time he got it up faster than that, and then realized the brakes were not designed for that. Yeah, and so I've talked about this before. If you're driving at night, you can drive faster in your headlights, meaning that what you can see with your headlights, if something popped up, you wouldn't have time to stop. Driving faster than that. So Ilya says they built an airstrip for Amelia Earhart. On which island? I don't know. Every now and then the scroll stops, and I think, "Hey, everybody left," and I'm like, "Oh, wait a second. No, it just it just stopped for some reason." Oh. Colin Bradley. Every time Steve goes live, I check my bookshelves. My brothers always walk off with one of your books. Linda Breckler. Nothing is anonymous anymore. Well, it depends. Because I don't know if you're really Linda Breckler. You might be somebody else just using the name Linda Breckler, and there might be a bunch of Linda Brecklers out there. And so, but I mean, if somebody's using a name like, 2497 and they say, "Hey, you're an idiot." I mean, they know that I don't know who they are. So, Sam as I am is questioning whether you can get a Grand Am to a buck 57. What of wants to settle this once and for all. Valley fever's fungus is a big, long Latin word. People and animals can become infected when they inhale the spores that become airborne, typically by things digging in dirt, construction, farming, or even strong winds. There you go. It jumped on me. Diana C. My go-to is the 1824 Webster Dictionary. I've got a bunch from the 1800s. I don't know about 1820s, but I've got a few old ones too. But I consider the Oxford English Dictionary to be the be-all and end-all. And if it doesn't agree with me, then I'll admit that I might be wrong. Might be. Might be. Bob blah blah says the score in the Bengals game is 6-7. 6-7. Oh. Josh Holman says an 1824 dictionary might be worth a lot of money, except they made a lot of dictionaries and they often survive because they're often in places like libraries. Wild Radio is just a gal who's into all things radio. Are we talking about ham radio or commercial radio or what? Vienticus Prime. I remember when Top Fuel dragsters broke 300. The amazing thing about that is when they had to shorten the quarter mile, shorten the drag run, make it even shorter, and the cars they just keep getting faster. They don't care. Josh Homan, at what point did they break 400? There's probably some physicists who figured out whether it's possible or not, and if so, when. Kevin Smith, congrats to John Force and Brittany on retirement. Yeah, I saw a thing about John Force retiring. That guy's been around for a million years. Howard Schoonover, there was this story about the guy going to libraries and also archives and cutting pages from rare books and then selling them. Yeah, there was a guy who was going into archives in particular. I don't know if it's the same guy or not, but stealing not the books themselves, but pages out of the books, which can be sold for money, and damaged a lot of stuff. And they caught him. They caught him. Wild Radio, yes and yes. Ham and local community broadcasting and building battery boxes and such. Okay. Johnny Z is just like the old Singer sewing machines. They made millions of them, not worth anything. You can go to an antique show or a flea market kind of place, and you'll see old sewing machines. And it's like, what are you going to do with it? Stick it in your living room, put it in your window. I mean, maybe up by the ceiling of a pub. Ilya Alawa says, I had to look it up, but the island in question was Howland Island. Yeah, is that Nicomaroro? 'Cause I always get the two islands confused because she was looking for one island and they think she landed near another. And there was that line that she was on, and there's all that stuff about whether she apparently couldn't hear them, but they could hear her, that kind of thing. So Chris Bulldog, the archive beneath the Vatican is supposed to be pretty impressive. Yeah, I saw that in a Tom Hanks movie. No, they've got a lot of stuff going way back. Daniel Kester, did anyone know that the movie Howard the Duck was a Marvel comic? Yes, and I believe it's also considered to be one of the worst movies ever made. But it just didn't work. Kevin Smith, my Husqvarna sewing machine is great. That's one thing about sewing machines is the modern ones usually are quite complex and quite built to exacting standards. And so if you make sewing machines, it's like you'll often hear about sewing machines, motorcycles, weapons, and those kinds of things are all being built by the same people. Mark Miller, how come we never hear anything about the Bermuda Triangle? What's worse, you remember all the different triangles? There was a Great Lakes Triangle. You find 3 points on a map, you just declare it a triangle. This is a Lehto's Law triangle. See, it's between that and that. I'm pointing my screen. So Michael Myers, any relation to the Disco Duck by Rick Dees and his cast of idiots. Oh, Dan Boyd pointed that out and then retracted it. Oh, Lethological Gaming. Did you see the security footage of a bear stealing a chainsaw? Yeah. I'm wondering, why did he do that? Did it smell like something? Like, or was he chewing on the handle, thought that was fun to chew on? Signata, question about this morning's video. Can he also sue for loss of livelihood and income? Arguably, I'm not sure what the law is in Florida, but it's not a contract. It's literally just somebody stole his stuff. And so if he can get a jury to believe that the damages that flowed from that involved loss of income and livelihood, yeah, he probably can. Ilya, I loved Howard the Duck, but my taste in movies wasn't that great when I was a kid. Like, I remember talking to little kids when I was a little kid and hearing from a friend of mine who saw the movie Santa Claus Conquers the Martians and was telling me what a great movie it was. And I didn't see it for the longest time. And as an adult, I saw it, I think on Mystery Science Theater, and realized, oh my gosh, but this would appeal to people under the age of 5. I mean, under 5. Ozzy Thompson says top fuel dragsters, if they were to run a full quarter these days, could probably hit 375. Wow. Fag Butterpants wants to know if the bear was wearing chaps. Oh boy. Sam as I am says they pretty much figured out the Bermuda Triangle. Methane gas pockets sank ships and piston engine planes. And of course, it's just the fact that it's a big open expanse of water. There's a lot of stuff that fell and sank out there. There's nothing special about the area at all. I actually saw somebody trying to explain the Bermuda Triangle, and they claimed they got in an airplane that left Bermuda and came to Florida, and they got there way, way, way ahead of schedule. And then the Bermuda Triangle also affected their watches. So everything came out the same, but they knew it was different. Dan Boyd, I'd rather run the whole quarter mile. Yeah, well, the problem is the cars were getting so fast, they thought that'd be a way to kind of slow them down and because if you're hitting 375 at the end, you probably need a longer run out at the far end, even with parachutes, just in case. Terry LeGros says we're paying about $4.70 US a gallon for gasoline in Australia. Paying more than we are, quite a bit. Howard Schooner versus Howard Cosell was with ABC until 1985. And then in 1986, Howard the Duck came out. are, you, are you saying there's a connection? Are they one and the same? I've never seen them in the same room together. Carl's Corners is cheaper than California. Oh, that's right. I always forget how wildly it varies from state to state. I'm gonna pour myself some more watered down Gatorade, which is what I drink. If I drank the straight Gatorade, I'm worried that the sugar would give me a buzz. That's pretty much all it is, sugar water. Image Doc Ray, $4.70 a gallon in California. Vinny Northwest, gas about $3.18 in Idaho. Andy New York 29 says, according to a study, the Bermuda Triangle is no more dangerous than any other area of the world. That's pretty much what I believe to be true, too. Wild Radio, 350 approximately, Pacific Northwest. Mrs. Teresa, 1999. Hi, Steve. Hope you're having a great weekend. Checking in from Geneva, New York. It says chicken in from Geneva, but I know what's going on. Jay Klein, when I lived in Denmark, I paid $100 for 15 gallons. Wow. This and that. When did you last play a video game? You mean like an upright? I think I played Centipede at an old arcade. There was a place that had a bunch of old arcade games, and I played a bunch of games of Centipede. I like Centipede a lot, but I like Defender the best. Haven't played Defender now in about 20 years. I'd love to get an upright Defender. Put it in my living room. G. Keyman, gas is $2.79 in Caro, Michigan. Lion Zookeeper, sorry I'm late. What did I miss? About an hour and 12 minutes of us just all over the place. Jason Brindamar, Zaxxon. Is that the one where the you were flying down here and the terrain came by you this way and you're shooting stuff and blowing stuff up? A bunch of them had made up names like that, and I can't remember which one that was. Vienna's Prime Defender was great. I can turn around and go the other way. And the trick was to learn to do this with your hand as fast as you could, and you could make the gun into the equivalent of a machine gun. And you just have to be careful not to shoot your own people, which is probably good advice to live by. Image Doc Ray once filled up his tank for $6 when he started driving. Those are the good days. Ian Gotti says Defender was what the cool kids played. Actually, there was one place I went to where all the kids who were like too young to legally smoke were all smoking, playing Defender. They thought they're the cool kids. Steve Kelleher, Joust. Yeah, Joust came up from Williams also. Williams learned a lesson with the Defender because Defender, you could play it all day long in a quarter, and they don't want you doing that. And so then they said we have to have games that get increasingly more difficult to where you can't play all day. Galaga was a good one, Mexican Spec. Yeah, Galaga was fun. I remember that one. Several other people like Galaga, Steve G, Nana Mel. Michael Myers, my father told me many times about buying diesel in New Jersey for 5 cents a gallon. That's before the government figured out, hey, we can tax it like 50 cents a gallon. Joking. Oh, Scott Summers, what about the Lake Michigan Triangle? Well, I joked earlier about the Great Lakes Triangle, too. Codemeister Beats points out there's ways that you can create a video game. It has to have the exact controls because the controls on a Defender are very, very specific. And I would want one that simulates the screen perfectly. I do not want one that does not look accurate. I've looked at the real ones. You can buy one now that's been rebuilt. They're not that expensive. Image Doc Ray Missile Command. That's the other one. I knew a guy. I knew a guy who could play Missile Command all day long on a quarter. Richard Terhune, Upright Asteroids. Yeah, Asteroids is cool too. That gets boring after a while, but if you learn how to do the thing where you fly by and blast 1,000-point UFOs. Janie Seagrass never played video games, but I used to watch my friend beat Pac-Man at the bowling alley. Yeah, you could memorize the patterns on Pac-Man. It was the weirdest thing. And I forgot how many screens. It's like 20 screens. But you could memorize which way to go, and you could just sit there and literally just go through the screens over and over again. But you had to memorize them all. And it took some time. I think they got their money out of you as you learned to memorize them. So the Edmund Fitzgerald went 50 years ago. It went down 50 years ago last week. And that was a big, big deal here in the Midwest, especially in Michigan. So Daniel Crenshaw got good at Missile Command. And I actually had Missile Command on a Game Boy, but it didn't translate as well. Wild Radio, y'all are a delight. Y'all. Fatty Butterpants, my brother played Donkey Kong all night. Dustin Carpenter says the 2025 and 1975 calendars are the same. Yeah, that happens periodically, as you might guess. Vienticus Prime, my favorite arcade game, was a 1990 game called Pigskin 621 AD. Well, it was like prehistoric football or what? Wild Radio, Doom on a TI 89. Doom. Chris Pott, being from Minnesota, I'm cautious about boating in Lake Superior. Lake Superior, to people who haven't seen it or been on it, you have to understand it's a scary lake. It's the largest lake on Earth if you go by surface area. They often tell people in the Midwest it's the largest on the planet. It's not. It's the third in volume, but it's the largest in footprint. But it gets ugly. The weather can change so fast, and you can't imagine how ugly the weather can get out there and how quickly it can change. So Dan Boyd never heard about the Edmund Fitzgerald until the song was released. He must not live in Michigan. I mean, it was front page news, the Detroit Free Press News back when it happened. Huge, huge news. And the whole controversy about why it sank and the investigations and all that stuff was all over there. John Montana, I've been on a Lehto binge for the last month. Love your content. Well, thank you very much. John Montana reminds me of that joke from The Naked Gun. You mean Tex Colorado, the Arizona assassin? No. You're you're thinking of New Jersey, Michigan, the California kid. Oh. Steve G, my dad got my brothers and I a Pong. What year? I don't remember. I remember a friend of mine got Pong too, which was it was one of those things. It was really exciting for a little while. It was just enough to where you'd want to have it yourself. And I mean, they sold a ton of them, but it very quickly fell by the wayside. I mean, the original ones you had to hook up your TV and the controllers and all that stuff. Oh boy. Solaris says the lakes are more like inland seas, and they're often called that. And by the way, the first person of European descent to see Lake Superior was probably Etienne Brule. And when he came to what is now present day Sault Ste. Marie, Canada, came back and told his bosses that he had just seen a great inland sea or a great freshwater sea. And he had no idea how big it was, but he said it was like the biggest lake he'd ever seen. And he had spoken to some locals who said, no, this lake, it just keeps going. I mean, they knew how they knew where the other end of it was, but they couldn't express it to him in a way that he understood it. And so it is very, very large. Scott Summers, WNEM, posted some of the Fitz stories from back in the day. Yeah, a lot of TV stations in and around the Great Lakes did that. Nana Mel's Pong was good on the big TV. Okay, Jason Brindamar says, I watched the Challenger explode in school, fourth grade. I'm going to mention something right now, and unfortunately, this is going to be one of those triggers. Many people will tell you that they saw the Challenger explode. And I always ask them, oh, what school did you go to? They go, what do you mean? And I go, well, it happened on a weekday during school, and we know that because it was being broadcast to schools. And I had people go, no, I was watching it live on TV. Now, why would you be watching a Challenger launch? But I saw it. And what happened was, it happened during the day. It was a weekday. I forgot what day of the week it was. And it was being watched by children at school because that was part of an educational thing because there's a teacher on board. But many people saw the film that evening on the news, and many years later think they were watching it live, and they weren't. But there you go. Jeffrey Orr, I was on a bus in California. I mean, I can tell you, I was at an office, and we had the radio on, and on a rock and roll station, which may have been WRIF, or it may have been WLLZ. I'm not sure which one it was, but an announcer, a disc jockey, came on and said, "There's been a problem on board the space shuttle." And I thought, that's so strange. You'd report a problem; it must be serious. Turn the radio off, turn the TV on because we had a TV there, and by then they'd cut away to the, they had anchors there, and they were doing it. So Jason Brindamar points out the name of the elementary school, and I was being more just making a point there, because if you were at school, you would have seen it. But Image Doc Ray watched the Challenger live at work. Shuttle launches were still appointment TV. Was it being broadcast on network television, or was it being broadcast on closed circuit TV? Oh, Jason Brindamar was listening to WRIF Drew and Mike when 9/11 happened. Yeah. Solaris, the long hauler rail fan, got home from work and saw the towers go down. Yeah, that's another one. I was at my office in Farmington and heard about the first tower, and a guy in the office next to me had a TV set turned on, just watching the continuous coverage on probably CNN or something. And no, it had to be network TV. I don't think he had cable. And he goes, "Wait, what's this?" He goes, "They have footage of it." I go, "The footage of what?" He goes, "No, wait a second." And they the second one was broadcast. They had cameras on it. So Doug Herndon says that the shuttle launch was broadcast on CNN. Now I'm curious. You got me going to the phones, people, here. By that I mean my. Hold on. Still typing. Hmm. Yeah, see, like I just pulled up a story here and it says Um, Space flight historians believe that each element of the opening paragraph is factually. Hang on, hang on. Few people actually saw the Challenger tragedy unfold live on television. The shuttle did not explode in the common definition of the word. Well, that's another thing. Hold on. Few people actually saw what happened live on television. The flight occurred during the early years of cable news, and although CNN was indeed carrying the launch when the shuttle was destroyed, all major broadcast stations had cut away, only to quickly return with taped relays. Um, but even that was only on CNN, apparently. But, anyways, like I said, I've known people who told me that. And I'm like, where'd you see it? And they're like, I was at work, but we always stopped work to watch the shuttle launches. Okay. Oh boy. Jay Klein, the last shuttle went down on re-entry, was live on TV. I remember that one because that's the one they had the footage of the pieces that were re-entering, and they were. It was hard to describe, but it was almost like it was like watching a falling star, but it was like more, like it was longer, and they knew what that was, and they were tracking it, and and I remember that because I was watching television as a Saturday morning. I'm pretty sure it was a Saturday morning, but Ilya's got to go. Sorry about that, my friend. My dog has other plans. Yeah, keep your limbs. Keep your limbs. En Cope Dog. Whatever the problem, Flock will fix it. Just ask any cop. Oh boy. Terry LaGrosse, legally, can you pick something up from the ground and put it back down again, or is that littering? That's an interesting question. I don't know as a good answer for that, because if you picked it up and like took possession of it and now you owned it and you put it back down again, that'd be littering. But you could say, look, I don't know. Depends what a cop thinks, what a jury thinks. The Great Quidjabo, which is a high scoring Scrabble word from The Simpsons. Greetings from Tampa. Thank you, my friend. Steve G, my parents became great grandparents to a boy named Leo. He lives in Washington. Does that make you a grandparent? This is very confusing. Very confusing. Oh boy. Tim Nostrum in California or Michigan when flight 255 went down. I was in Michigan, and 255 is a plane that crashed during takeoff, basically, at Detroit Metro Airport. And a lot of very, very strange things about that accident. One of which is that one person survived. One person survived as a little girl. Everybody else deceased. And they later came to the conclusion that the wing flaps were not down in their fully extended position they're supposed to be in upon takeoff. And part of the problem was there's supposed to be a warning to indicate when the flaps weren't down, and somebody disabled the warning because it's annoying. So, Chris Pott, life is confusing, then you die. Wild Radio says, I really appreciate how smart and considerate this chat is. So refreshing. You haven't noticed the 2 or 3 comments that disappeared? Kevin Smith asks, do you ever have guests on? I've never had guests on. I've done 1 or 2 appearances with other people. I get invited to be on other people's programs and vice versa, but I don't have a setup here for another person. And I don't like doing the linked up things because of my way it's all set up. But I wish I could more of a talk show thing, but what are you gonna do? Vienticus says, "I like to disable my you're dissolving in a vat of acid warning because it's annoying to." Yeah, I like to shut off the one that says this is about to explode. You always hear these stories though, and I'm not trying to make fun of this, but where somebody will get killed in an industrial accident, and OSHA will go in and investigate, and they'll say, "Yeah, before this one machine cycles, you have to press a button over here and a button over here so that your arms aren't in there." And somebody will duct tape down two of the buttons so that they can cycle the machine faster. And I've actually read a report where OSHA showed up and there's duct tape holding down the safety switches. What are you gonna do? Image Doc Ray should do more VinWiki. I am doing more VinWiki. I shot 10 videos with him earlier this year, and I think he's played 4 so far, or maybe 3. But there's gonna be one a month the next few months, I'm pretty sure. Johnny Quest, if you come across the Weld County, Colorado speed cameras charging $300 more than the state cap of $40. I have. I'll do a video on it this week, most likely. I've been bombarded with that one also. The Prodigal Stranger of InWiki should do more Steve Lehto. Well, Ed sat for a video with me, and I put it up in 2 parts on my channel, which is kind of funny because I actually brought my cameras with me. I brought a couple cameras. I said, "Hey, Ed, can I interview you?" He said, "Sure." And I said, "Can I set up my cameras?" He goes, "Why don't we just use my camera?" I'm like, "Oh, okay, if you don't mind." Oh boy. Kevin Smith, we could talk model cars. Yeah, I don't know much about model cars, except I know about the cars they're modeled on. Image doc rate of feeding interlocks. Yeah, the Peter principle. I've actually I got a tour of a printing facility where they print books, and it's fascinating to watch books get printed because they um they print books on, all the pages start out as like a single piece of paper that's huge, and it gets folded a bunch of times and cut a bunch of times, and that becomes a package of like 48 pages or 96 pages or something like that. And so these huge sheets of paper getting sliced in literally stacks this thick, and a blade like this wide. And so to the person's going to push the paper in, or it might be pushed out, whatever. And then they line it up, and then that's when I saw where there was a button over here, and they cycled it with their foot. I remember watching that going, I see why they're doing that. And they would do that. John Montana, Ed has the deepest voice ever. Ed Bolian missed his calling in life. He should have become a newsman. Ed Bolian could have been a newscaster and done swimmingly well. I don't know if he would have enjoyed it or not, but he sold cars, he leased cars, he did a bunch of other stuff, and now he does what he does with VinWiki. But he could have easily been a news anchor and done extremely well. Daniel Crenshaw, printing is fascinating. The plates, the machines are loaded with our photosensitive coated steel. The current exposure method uses lasers. Yeah, think back to the days they used to use like the linotypes or even earlier than that, hand set type, uppercase and lowercase. And the idea that you have to like at the time, learn to read backwards and stuff. It's amazing how much work went into making books. So Kip Morse, a friend of mine, had an early 70s Mazda. Every time he hit the brakes, the most annoying alarm would go off. Years later, we found out it was because a brake light was out. I remember my brother was driving somebody's old Mazda from the late 80s and discovered you could start it by stepping on the clutch just right because the solenoid was shorting out or something. I can't exactly remember how that worked, but I remember it did work. Jason Brinemar, the typewriter we had as kids, had an erase button. Yeah, I remember I took typing class in junior high, typing with manual typewriters. Oh boy. Oh, Mark Miller, a friend of mine, worked for his stepdad at a blueprint company. Remember blueprints? Talk about an overwhelming ammonia smell. Was that similar to what they had on the mimeograph machines? Remember those? Remember the smell you got off those? Josh Holman, you think book production is interesting? Have you seen newspaper production? Oh, that's even crazier. With the long rows of it's a long piece of paper. It's crazy. John Zabel, like the IBM Selectric. My mom had a Selectric. I used to type up like book reports and stuff on it. Jason Brindamore, Blueprints, and Ammonia. I remember that. Jason the Music Man, I graduated in 93. Fatima Butterpants, taking a test in school, smelling the paper. Isn't there a joke about that? Is it in Ferris Bueller's Day Off? Is that where the teacher hands something out and they all smell it? Or is that Fast Times at Ridgemont High? It's one of them high school movies. Daniel Kester can do 35 words a minute hunting and pecking. Oh boy. Several people are saying it's Fast Times. Prodigal Stranger, Tiger Man, Jay Klein, Mark Miller. Yeah, I saw Fast Times recently. I did see it very recently, so that might be why it's stuck in my head. Kip Moore, likewise. Yeah, and that, of course, at the end, it says that Jeff Spicoli saved Brooke Shields from drowning and then used the prize money, the reward money, to hire Van Halen to play his party. Good times. Mr. Hand, Prodigal Stranger. Sam as I am could only do 35 words a minute in school, but when he got in the chat rooms on AOL, he got up to $1.35. Or the chat rooms on Yahoo. Remember those? Image Doc Rare. Remember when an IBM Selectric cost more than a new car, or just an early 4-function calculator when they first came out. They were considered like magical almost. John Montana, Brooke Shields is easy on the eyes. She had them eyebrows though. Daniel Kester, does your Viper have 6 forward stick shift? Am I correct? Yes. We just refer to that as a 6-speed. We don't count reverse as a speed, but yeah. 6 forward, 1 back. Yeah, 116356 points out. The AOL finally discontinued dial-up service in September. Darn. No wonder I can't get on the internet anymore. Wait, Tiger Man says that Sean Penn has a story about meeting much later the guy upon whom he based his Spicoli. Well, wait, are you saying that he met the guy after he portrayed him, or met him before, or because what's funny is Spicoli's accent, that surfer accent, is actually it's like the Valley Girl accent, and it was just I mean you heard people talking like that in the movies, but also just on the beaches of California. Yeah, standard deviation reminds us that Hewlett Packard calculators were expensive and they had the reverse Polish notation. Forgive that, but 5 plus 5 equals 10 is 5 enter 5 plus 10. So Steve G says you never count reverse because there's no going back. Image Doc Ray says there's a memorable moment in Fast Times at Ridgemont High with Phoebe Cates getting out of a pool. Is there? George Steele, I'm so old. I remember pushing a car with a dead battery, jumping and switching to first and popping the clutch. You'd also pop it in a higher gear if you wanted to, depending on what the car it was. I've push started many cars. I'm not sure if I've ever push started my own car by myself. I don't know if I've ever done that, but Jay Klein, that's bogus. 116-3562 says, am I the youngest here? I graduated high school in 07. You might be. My audience is old. Yeah, Johnny Z. Fraley points out that there is a skit on SNL from a couple years ago called The Californians. And at first it's kind of weird, but then you realize what they're doing and it gets funnier and funnier. Oh no, dude, just take the 101 to the 405, get off at Topanga, and then like the entire discussion is how people get places. Yeah, so NZ Kiwis AOL was the first ever internet and email I ever had in New Zealand. I never understood why people in their own countries, like, didn't somebody in New Zealand go, hey, instead of AOL, let's have NZOL? Like, what? I mean, somebody must have, right? Or did AOL spread that quickly? Vienticus Prime got his first driving lesson driving a stick in a 1984 Ford Escort on the highway with cars zooming by you, right? Oh boy. Vienticus, remember CompuServe? Oh, there's all kinds of companies that popped up at that time. I remember Wired magazine predicting that the phone companies and the cable companies would soon take over the internet. Really? Who'd have thought? Daniel Crenshaw cannot drive stick. Uh-oh. Vienticus Prime kept stalling at traffic lights. Ooh. I've recently begun I've recently tried teaching someone to drive a manual, but not in my Viper. No, no, no. But in my Jeep. But some people pick it up faster than others. Johnny Z says people in New Zealand are still trying to cancel their AOL accounts. Oh boy. Joanne True, my first internet connection was text only in the early 90s. Yeah, I remember what year would I have gotten on the internet? Trying to remember. Yeah, I remember when you're on AOL and you got the so many free hours and they charge you by the minute after that. Just ridiculous. They were making so much money it was silly. Jay Klein, CompuServe was my first internet provider because it came free with a computer I got for 2 years. That's not bad. Freddie Fast Eddie 33 3. My first internet system was web TV. Standard deviation. Remember Usenet? I mean, I think back. I remember working with attorneys, and an attorney going someplace, and then we were going to try to, in essence, send a file to them. And nowadays, of course, you would just attach it to an email. But long before that, and you try to get the computer. Okay, hang up the phone, and in 5 minutes from now, you'll have to have done the following things, and eventually you get it to work. But nowadays, it's just so. Chris Bulldog, the TRS 80 from Radio Shack, loading games off of cassette tapes. And what's funny is you look at all the other technologies that fell along the way, like the zip drives and tape backups. But the fact they actually used it was basically a cassette tape, right? At one point or another. And then, of course, the big floppies and then the smaller floppies. And now, of course, we've got something like that, which can hold a terabyte of information, and it's literally smaller than your pinky nail. Technology is amazing. Dan Boyd still owns a 3 on the tree. Image doc ready. You remember fax? Spam? Of course. I used to get spam fax in my office all day long, every single day. It was vacation places. I used to call them and harass them. Why would I want to go there? Are there people there? Mini disc recorders, wild radio. Oh, boy. Josh Holman saw an article in the 60s that predicted we would never actually own personal computers. Well, if you think about how expensive they were at one point, I read an article, or I think I saw a documentary about it. The Cray supercomputers. When a computer is like the size of a small garage and costs more than a house, it's hard to imagine that someday we'd all have something this big in our pockets that would do, just as much almost. So, Vianticus does say that people at one point in time thought horseless carriages would be beyond the reach of the average person. Think about that. Go back to like 1900, and people are building cars, and many of them are electric, but where do you charge them? Many of them are gas, but where do you buy gasoline? And, the infrastructure wasn't there. Like you think, like, oh, I'll jump in a car and I'll drive to Detroit. Not in 1900. You ain't gonna. Jason Brindamauer still uses a mini disc all the time. Paul Harris, my first Mac was just under $6,000. I'm pretty sure I knew somebody who paid more than $13,000 for a Mac setup, and that was the monitor, keyboard, box, but also a printer. The printers were expensive back then too. David Phillips, party line telephones. Yeah, we talked about these before, the history of telephones in America and how long that stuff lasted. Linda Breckler, who may or may not be Linda Breckler, says, "Thank you, Steve. Great as always. Got to go. Thanks for checking in. Thanks for saying hello. I appreciate that." Prince Albert says, "My mom and my aunt bought fax machines so they could communicate faster than mail, but cheaper than calling long distance." It would work, right? Chris Tope, I remember looking at an accounting firm in the mid 80s. They wanted $150,000 for the mainframe. That was the big break, was whether or not you'd buy a big computer and simply keep updating it, or simply update your computers every so often. And I actually knew a guy who was an attorney who had bought a bunch of big, expensive computers, not quite a mainframe, but these things were not, they weren't Windows, they weren't Macs, they were something else, green monitors, and they had their own proprietary system, and they were so expensive and so worthless. they became they became outmoded within like 6 months. And I mean, he was, yeah. Steve, I remember the next town over being long distance. What's funny is the house I grew up in changed area codes a whole bunch of times because it was the same area code as Detroit for a while, even though it was a county over. And then as the area codes, as more and more phone numbers. But do you remember when there was all the anxiety about whether or not we'll have enough phone numbers? Because everyone's gonna have a phone, and then a cell phone, and then a fax, and then a pager. Pagers. Oh boy. Sometimes I listen to myself. Thanks, Steve. I'm heading to the courts to knock around some tennis balls. I assume you mean tennis courts, not like a legal courthouse. Oh, prodigal stranger hated changing area codes. What a pain. We went from 201 to 973. What's funny is one of them was 810, which only, I seem to recall, is very, very short period of time. It went from 313 to 810 to 248, and the 810 wasn't that long. And I mean, I remember getting business cards reprinted because they changed the area codes. I'm like, this is stupid. Richard Harper, hey Steve, I'm an amateur radio operator. Always have loved your microphone collection. There was an amateur call sign behind you for a while. Who was that and where did it go? I'm not sure what you're referring to. I've had a bunch of stuff behind me. It's all been sent in by viewers. I am not an amateur radio operator, but there is a old radio tube right there, which I think is off camera now. And that was sent in by a viewer. I can plug it in and it glows, with power. And the guy who sent that in to me passed away a year or two back. And so I actually put up a video on my backup channel about that. So a lot of the history it asked about has been answered on my backup channel. So just Steve Lehto's second channel. So run my name through YouTube, you find my other channel. And I've got a video about that guy because he sent that in. And then I got a note from somebody else just to let you know. I believe his name is Norm. Norm passed away. And so I did a video about him because it was kind of cool. The guy actually wired it so I could plug it in and make it glow. Image Doc Ray, remember answering services? Yes, I'm stepping out. Can you take my calls and then I'll get back to you 2 o'clock. Yeah. Daniel Crenshaw's got to go. His husky needs his daily run, and if the huskies don't run, they get anxious and they start howling, and you don't want that. Jacob Portos says, wow, the background is just a wooden thing in a room full of white walls. That's crazy. First of all, that's not white. That's agreeable gray. Oh, boy. It's in there somewhere. Josh Home and Norm, God rest his soul. Lion Zookeeper says that was a wonderful tribute. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. NZ Kiwi says, now I only have a tablet. I'm actually doing, I should mention this. Anybody who's in Michigan, I'm doing a talk on Tuesday at the Roseville Historical and Genealogical Society at a school in Roseville. Tuesday night, I'm talking about the Chrysler Turbine car. And I'm doing a PowerPoint presentation, which I've not done in quite a while. So I had to go find it on my computer someplace, and I found it. I have to update it, and they apparently don't have a computer for me to use because normally I can bring a thumb drive. So I've got to dig up a computer. I've actually got a laptop. I don't use it very often, but I'll dig my laptop out, put the PowerPoint on there, and then I will do my PowerPoint. But anyway, Tuesday, if you are in the Macomb County area in Michigan, Tuesday night, I'm speaking for the Roseville Historical and Genealogical Society, and I'll be hanging out, talking. I have a whole PowerPoint presentation I do, and there you go. Andrew Kruchowski, just in time to say goodbye. Enjoy the rest of your day. There's a song, "Time to Say Goodbye," which is often sung on those contest singing shows. Prince Albert's, will it be televised? No. I might record it. We'll see. Jason Brindamar says agreeable gray sounds like a Sherwin-Williams color. It's actually a color that I forgot which paint company named it that, but it's a common color used by decorators. So it's not white, it is gray, but agreeable gray. Josh Holman points out that area codes on cell phones are pointless because if you move and you keep it, and that's, I've known people who call me like, why do you have the area code? And they're like, oh yeah, 12 years ago when I got the phone. Vienticus says yes, but there's always battleship gray. I could go camo. I could do 4-color camo like my army truck was. Weird Car Life says, hey, I pulled off a Costco run and you're still streaming. Did you pick up one of them cheap chickens? Chris in Virginia says, I purposely asked for an area code out of my general vicinity. Why not? And it's true that the area codes now are pretty much meaningless. Bill McMahon says, sorry I'm late. I was taking a nap. But were you listening in your sleep? So G. Keyman did the work for us and says that agreeable gray is, in fact, a Sherwin-Williams paint color. It is SW7029. And Johnny Z points out that's one of 50 shades of gray. There are thousands of shades of gray, but I know what you're saying. Oh, boy. And don't forget about sandable gray primer. There's also that rusty red primer, which I know they use them for different purposes, but I just thought there's a weird color. Mexican spec, I use white primer on my car. White primer. Okay. Image Doc Race says area codes are not useless. More digits means more available numbers. No, we're talking about whether they're useful to identify where you're calling from. In other words, why if you live in area code 313, should you get a 313 number? Get something else. Why not? You know? Parump Mike says, I don't do business with companies who use an area code from another state. Well, then there's where it would cut against that, right? Janie Seagrass says agreeable gray is actually a very popular color. No, I know it is. I know it is. It's like I said, it's used by a lot of decorators. And if you're going to repaint something, you don't want to go with some color that people might, be offended by or upset by. So you go with something that's, agreeable. That's the thinking, at least. Fast Eddie 333. What's your favorite bagel flavor? Believe it or not, I had a bagel this morning. I had a bagel with cream cheese on it, just straight Philly cream cheese. If I go to a place that makes bagels, I'll often get something else. But Asiago cheese. There's a place. What's the bagel place? It's been so long since I've gotten one. Um, there was one near an office I used to have, and I used to go there all the time, and I'd get the Asiago cheese bagels. But now I just plain bagels with cream cheese. Although occasionally butter, and once in a while even peanut butter. It's getting crazy there. What else is a great song called Primer Gray by Slade Cleaves? Never heard of it. Fast Eddie. I love pumpernickel or jalapeno. Bagels? Yeah, I don't. Dan Boyd, onion bagels for the win. There's also the everything bagel, and there's a huge controversy about who invented the everything bagel. If you didn't trademark it, and you didn't copyright it, too bad. 182 KFTW Einstein's Bagels. That's a good place. I've been there many times. There's a couple of those that I know about. Yeah, we're getting near the top of the hour. So again, if you're in Southeast Michigan, consider checking me out when I speak at the Roseville Historical and Genealogical Society. Johnny Z said I like more cream cheese on the bagel than the bagel itself. When I went to law school, there was a cafeteria in the basement, and I'd go down there and get a bagel and cream cheese, and the guy would literally just take the block and go and just put it on there, like like you couldn't spread it. It was already this thick. But at that point, I was running every day, and I was running around like a madman. I had no trouble with. I could take in 1,000,000,000 calories, and I'd be fine. Not so much anymore. 116-3562 says if I didn't work on Tuesday, I'd totally go check it out. Well, it's in the evening, 6 or 7, I think. I have to check. Dan Boyd lists a bunch of things, including lox and herring. Oh, Steve Seinfeld's day-old stale bagels. No bagel, no bagel, no bagel. We're on strike. George Steele says the ideal ratio is, in fact, 1-to-1, cream cheese to bagel. Vienticus, I'm too young to be old for this stuff. Oh, boy. Well, that's going to wrap it for me. We've been here for 2 hours and 4 minutes, something like that. I'm going to sign off now. Again, like I said, as always, watch my main channel. If you got real weird questions about the history of the channel, always check my second channel and just search it. You might be able to find stuff in there, like what's on the shelves behind me and so on. Otherwise, I will talk to you guys next weekend, as I always do. I'll talk to you later.